Hey everyone, welcome back. In this video, the last video of week 2, we're talking about Gettier problems, also called Gettier cases, which are problems raised for the justified true belief account of knowledge that we looked at in the last video. So, Gettier, Ed Gettier, who published this paper in the 1960s, it was a 3-page paper, which is very short for philosophy papers, and it gave two counterexamples to the justified true belief account of knowledge. And Ed Gettier later, I'm told, expressed regret about the paper because he thought it was too long, because he gave 2 cases and one would have been enough. So he could have done it in 2 pages. And that was his regret, which is, all right, brevity's good. I'm all for that. So Gettier argues that justified true belief is not a good account of knowledge. And he says that it's not a good account of knowledge because it's not sufficient. You can have a justified true belief. You can meet all 3 conditions, justification, truth, and belief, without having knowledge. You can have a justified true belief that does not and should not count as knowledge. So you can meet all 3 conditions without having knowledge. So the 3 conditions together may well all be necessary for knowledge, but they are not together sufficient for knowledge. Meeting these conditions does not suffice for knowledge. So it might be necessary, but it isn't sufficient. You can have a justified true belief and still not have knowledge. So Gettier argues using examples, and any examples along these lines are now called Gettier cases or Gettier problems. So we'll look at one example that comes from Gettier's paper, and then we'll look at some other examples that are hopefully a little bit clearer, because since his paper was published, we've had over 50 years in philosophy to come up with examples, and some of them are a little clearer than the 2 prototype examples he raised in the paper. So the Smith and Jones case is from Gettier's paper. So Smith and Jones are 2 employees, and they're both up for a big promotion. Now, Smith has good evidence that Jones will get the promotion. Maybe Smith was told by the CEO that Jones will get the promotion, or Smith's interview went terribly and Jones's interview went great, or whatever. But Smith has some good evidence that Jones will get the promotion. And Smith has good evidence that Jones has 10 coins in their pocket. So Smith watched Jones empty their pockets and count out 10 coins. So Jones has 10 coins, and Smith knows or has good evidence that Jones has 10 coins. So Smith has good evidence that Jones will get the promotion, and Smith has good evidence that Jones has 10 coins. So Smith concludes that the person who's going to get the promotion has 10 coins in their pocket. The person who's going to get the promotion has 10 coins in their pocket. So Smith believes that the person who's going to get the promotion has 10 coins in their pocket, right? Smith has this belief. And that belief is justified. Smith has good evidence that Jones is going to get the promotion and has 10 coins. So Smith has good evidence that this is true. Smith's belief is justified. But as a matter of fact, Smith is actually going to get the promotion. And although Smith does not realize this, Smith has 10 coins. Smith and Jones both have 10 coins in their respective pockets. And so Smith doesn't realize this, but Smith has 10 coins in their pocket and is going to get the promotion. So Smith's belief that the person who's going to get the promotion has 10 coins in their pocket is true. That is, in fact, a true belief. So it is a belief that Smith has, and it is justified by evidence about Jones, but still good evidence, still a justification. And it's true. So it's a justified true belief. So Smith has a justified true belief that the person who's going to get the promotion has 10 coins in their pocket. Now, Does Smith know that the person who's going to get the promotion has 10 coins in their pocket? No. Smith does not know that the person who's going to get the promotion has 10 coins in their pocket. It's just dumb luck that Smith's belief happens to be true. Smith has no idea that she's getting the promotion or that she has 10 coins in her pocket. That is news to Smith. That would be news if you told Smith that. Therefore, Gettier argues, Smith has a justified true belief, but does not have knowledge. Smith has a true belief, and it is justified. But because the justification is built on false beliefs about Jones, or at least one false belief about Jones, Smith doesn't really know. The fact that Smith's belief is true is somehow disconnected from Smith's justification. Smith's justification is all tied up in thinking Jones is going to get the promotion and that Jones has 10 coins in their pocket. So Smith's belief that the person who's going to get the promotion has 10 coins in their pocket is true and it's justified, but it's still not knowledge because it's still kind of just a lucky guess. It's still just dumb luck that this justification that was all wrapped up in a mistake turned out to still be justifying a true belief. The belief turned out to be true, even though the justification was wrapped up in some mistakes on Smith's part. So Smith has a justified true belief, but it still does not count as knowledge. And Gettier says this shows that knowledge must not be justified true belief. It must be something more, or possibly something else. But justified true belief is therefore not sufficient for knowledge. Now, Smith doesn't know that the person who's going to get the promotion has 10 coins in their pocket. It's just dumb luck. And so she does not have a justified, or she does have a justified true belief, but she does not have knowledge. So that's Gettier's original case, or one of Gettier's two original cases. Here's another one, which comes from a British philosopher named Bertrand Russell. It's called the clock case, or the stopped clock case. So Alice wants to know what time it is. And Alice looks at a clock. You know how one does. You want to know what time it is, you look at a clock. That's life. It's what we all do every day. And now the clock says that it is 1 o'clock. Let's say 1 p.m. if it's digital. Let's say it just says 1 if it's an analog clock. So Alice looks at the clock. The clock says that it's 1 o'clock. And based on that, Alice believes that it's 1 o'clock. And let's say Alice's belief is true. It really is 1 o'clock. So Alice believes that it's 1 o'clock, and it really is 1 o'clock. So Alice has a true belief. But more than that, Alice has a justified true belief. Her belief is justified because she didn't just guess what time it was. She doesn't always believe it's 1 o'clock, like in the example I said where I believe it's 3 p.m. all the time. She just looked at a clock and believed that the time was whatever the clock said it was. We all do that every day. That's a perfectly good justification for believing what time it is. She didn't just guess. She looked at a clock and believed the clock. And so that justifies her belief. If that doesn't justify a belief in what time it is, then no one can possibly have a justified belief in what time it is. Looking at a clock to find out what time it is how you get a justified belief of what time it is. So Alice has a justified true belief. She believes it's 1 o'clock. It's justified because she looked at a clock. And it's true. It really is 1 o'clock. Justified true belief. Done. She's met all three conditions. According to the justified true belief account of knowledge, these three conditions are sufficient for knowledge. So according to that account, Alice now has knowledge. So she has a justified true belief that it's 1 o'clock. And according to the account we're looking at, that means she has knowledge. However, detail that I did not talk about on the previous slide, Alice was looking at a broken clock. You know how analog clocks, they break and they stop moving? Alice was looking at a broken clock. She did not know it was broken, but it was broken. So the clock always says 1. It always says it's 1 o'clock, no matter what time it actually is. So Alice looks at this stopped clock. The clock says it's 1 o'clock. Based on that, she comes to believe that it is 1 o'clock, and it really is 1 o'clock. But she doesn't know that it's 1 o'clock. She doesn't really know what time it is. She only believes it because she got lucky. By sheer coincidence, by sheer dumb luck, she happened to look at the clock at the exact time when the clock would be right. Because the clock says 1 o'clock, so it is wrong almost all of the time. It's right twice a day, at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. The clock's only right twice a day. Every other time of day, the clock is wrong. Alice got lucky. She happened to glance at the clock during the 1 minute or one of the 2 minutes of the day where it would be correct. The time it always says would be correct. So she happened to get lucky. So she has a justified true belief, but she doesn't know. She doesn't have knowledge. And her true belief, her justified true belief, is still not reliable. If she had looked at that clock when it was 2 o'clock, she would have come to believe that it was 2 o'clock. No, that it was 1 o'clock still, because that's what the clock would say. And then she would have been wrong. So her belief is justified, but it's still not knowledge. And it's still not reliable. It's still just a matter of sheer dumb luck, which is exactly what we want to avoid when we find out, when we get knowledge. Knowledge is supposed to prevent sheer dumb luck, or being right purely out of dumb luck. But Alice's justified true belief is still just true by dumb luck, so she doesn't really have knowledge. So Alice doesn't have knowledge. So, one more Gettier case, and then we'll wrap it up and we can move on. Suppose you're standing on a hill and you're looking out over a field. Looking down at the field, you see a large barn. You know how fields have barns. This is a farm, let's say. You see a large barn. And next to that barn, you see a sheep, or see what looks exactly like a sheep. You've seen sheep before. You know what sheep look like. This is an obvious sheep. And so you conclude that there's a sheep in the field. You see this sheep, and you conclude that there's a sheep in the field. So you believe that there's a sheep in the field. And your belief is clearly justified. You saw it. You saw the sheep. It seems like we should be justified in believing things that we see. If that's not justification, then what is? So you have this belief, and your belief is justified. But it turns out that what you thought was a sheep wasn't really a sheep. Maybe it was just a very clever cardboard cutout of a sheep, or a sheep statue painted realistically, or a pile of rocks that looked like a sheep, or a dog in a sheep's costume, a roughly sheep-sized dog in a sheep costume. You know how they make costumes for dogs now? Dog in a sheep costume, a very believable sheep costume, a high quality, like Hollywood, very nice, fancy, high-budget sheep costume. If you see a dog running around in a high-budget sheep costume that looks exactly like a sheep, you are very justified in believing that you saw a sheep. To have looked at what was obviously a sheep running around and have concluded, oh, I bet that's a dog in a high-budget sheep costume, would be insane. You're perfectly justified looking at that and concluding that there's a sheep there. So you have this justified belief. There's this error in your justification because what you're looking at is not actually a sheep, but it looks so much like a sheep that you're clearly justified in believing that it's a sheep. So you have this justified belief there's a sheep in the field. And it turns out behind the barn, there is a sheep. You can't see it because, it's behind the barn and barns aren't see-through. It's not a glass barn. It's like a wood barn, like in movies, red paint and everything. So behind that barn is a sheep, which you can't see and you don't know is there. So your justified belief that there's a sheep in the field is true. There really is a sheep in that field. So you have a justified true belief that there's a sheep in the field. You believe there's a sheep in the field, and it's justified because you saw what looks exactly like a sheep running around in that field. And it's true, there really is a sheep in that field. So you have a justified true belief that there's a sheep in the field. However, you do not know that there's a sheep in the field. You only think that because you mistook the cardboard cutout or the statue or the rocks or the dog in a costume, whatever you want, for a sheep. You mistook this dog in a sheep costume. I like that version. We'll go with that. This dog in the high budget sheep costume for a sheep. You mistook it for a sheep, and that's why you believe there's a sheep in the field. So your belief is true and your belief is justified, but it's still not really tied to the facts. Your justification for your belief there's a sheep in the field really has nothing to do with the actual sheep that's actually in that field, because you can't see that sheep. You have no idea it's there. So you have a justified true belief, but you still don't have knowledge. It's still not tied to the facts in the right way. It's still not reliable. If there wasn't a sheep behind the barn, you would have the exact same belief off the exact same justification, and you'd be wrong. So there's got to be something else. Knowledge can't just be justified true belief. In this case, you have a justified true belief, but don't have knowledge. So there's some condition out there that you're not meeting that must be necessary for knowledge. Because justified true belief is not, it turns out, sufficient for knowledge. So Gettier problems seem to show that having a justified true belief is not sufficient for knowledge. Because you can have a justified true belief and still not have knowledge. Justified true belief does not suffice for knowledge. It's not enough on its own for you to have knowledge. And philosophers have tried to come up with some fourth condition. Because justified true belief really sounds good. It really sounds like it's on the right track. There's something right about it. Belief sounds good. True, that seems good. Justification, that seems important. That seems good. All three of those really do seem necessary for knowledge. It really does seem like together they should be sufficient. Turns out they're not, but it does seem like each of those is necessary for knowledge. If you don't believe something, you don't know it. If it's not true, you don't know it. And if you're not justified in believing it, then you certainly don't know it. So each of those still seems necessary. They all seem like necessary conditions for knowledge. It's just that together they aren't sufficient. So what do we do in that case? Well, we try to find another condition that added to justified true belief will be sufficient for knowledge. Some fourth condition, the necessary condition that's left out in these Gettier cases. So we try to add some fourth condition, often called a Gettier condition, that can be added to the justified true belief account of knowledge to give us the good definition of knowledge that we're after, to give us a set of necessary and sufficient conditions that will give us a full analysis of what it means to have knowledge. And the hope is that the fourth condition, the Gettier condition, will rule out the Gettier cases. It'll give us some necessary condition that is not met in the Gettier cases, which will explain why we don't have knowledge in those cases. It'll give us the condition that those cases don't meet, that some condition that Alice's belief does not meet in the clock case, or that your belief does not meet in the sheep case, or that Smith's belief does not meet in the Smith and Jones case. Some condition that is necessary for knowledge that those beliefs in these cases do not meet. And that will explain why they don't have knowledge, because there's this necessary condition they don't meet. That's why. And that's what we want. We want an explanation for why we don't have knowledge in the Gettier cases. And the hope is that finding and adding a fourth condition will give us that explanation and give us that good account of knowledge with necessary and sufficient conditions to really give us a full, deep analysis of what it means to have knowledge. But no adequate fourth condition has been found yet. This is still an open problem in philosophy. We still don't know really what to do about this. So it's an open problem. No one's really solved it. There's no consensus about what to do. And so maybe you could be the one to solve it. I encourage you to think about it, work through it, see what you think. If you have any questions or anything you want to talk through with me, please let me know. I will be happy to discuss these issues with you. And hopefully, one day someone will find the fourth condition one way or another, and we will have the full analysis of knowledge that we want. But in the meantime, the course moves on. So this is the end of our videos for this week, week 2, on what knowledge is. If you have any questions about anything we've discussed in these videos, please do not hesitate to reach out and let me know. You have my email address, both of them. They're on the syllabus. Either email is fine. They go to the same inbox. I get the same notifications on my phone. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in the videos next week. Until then, take care.